A massage chair might seem a bit extravagant, especially these days. 8 different settings, adjustable intensity, plus it's heated, and it just feels so good. Yes, a massage chair might seem a bit extravagant, but when it can come with a car, suddenly it seems quite practical. The all-new 2025 Volkswagen Tiguan, packed with premium features like available massaging front seats, it only feels extravagant.
Your kids could get free or low-cost health coverage from Medicaid or CHIP. Even if you've applied before, they may be eligible now. Kids up to age 19 are covered for checkups, vaccines, dentist visits, hospital care, and more. And if they already have Medicaid or CHIP, remember to renew every year. Visit insurekidsnow.gov or call 877-KIDS-NOW. Paid for by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
The Timeline is a Blue Wire podcast. Welcome to the Timeline of Phoenix Suns podcast. My name is Mike, here with Sam. Sam, how are you doing?
We're finally back. Things are not terrible. Things are in motion again with the Phoenix Suns. I'm doing well, to answer your question, Mike. Apologies to the people who were expecting an episode from us at the beginning of this week, because I guess actually the better question is, how are you feeling? We were delayed for a little bit.
Yeah, I was sick, which worked out in our favor, in that we got to wait to record until Devin Booker came back and the Suns won a game, so we didn't have to record after that brutal streak of losses there. But I feel better now, well enough to talk about the Phoenix Suns, and part of that probably is because Devin Booker is back, and we're recording this the day after they won a game finally against the number one defense in the NBA in the Minnesota Timberwolves. That was a fun one, right?
I feel like that's a stat that we're going to be throwing out for the rest of the season.
They almost knocked him out of it. I was like, this offensive performance by the Suns might be good enough to knock them out of first place, but it didn't. They're still in first.
They're still in first place. Okay. Yeah. Well, if ultimately they drop out of first place at some point this season, we're still going to look back on this game, hopefully as maybe, like we talk about the fact that this team was 8-8 the season that they made the finals. Maybe this will be the catalyst that we look back on and say, this is where it all changed. Even if the Timberwolves become like a league average defense at some point this season, if they regress back to, I guess, where people more so expected them to be, we'll be like, remember that game where the Suns took out the number one defense in the NBA. Look, it was obviously a great game, not just the fact that they won, but the fact that they came out with the urgency that they did and really pounced on them. I know we were all still scared, at least a little bit, like entering the second half and especially the fourth quarter, because this team has now traumatized us like 3 times in the fourth quarter this season, but they built themselves just far too big of a cushion this time around. Yeah,
and there's just a difference between Devin Booker coming back and Bradley Beal, who I don't think was even fully healthy when he was back, in comparison. And of course, Bradley Beal still didn't play in the last game against the Timberwolves, and we're hoping he'll be back maybe Friday against Utah tomorrow. We're recording this on Thursday, and then they can actually have that big 3 for an in-season tournament game, if that matters to anyone listening, in Utah against the Jazz, somewhere where Devin Booker has played very well throughout his career. But, the big story of that game, besides the fact that they won and scored so many points, was Devin Booker coming back. And, the question, I think, with Devin Booker coming back is, does he, fix all of the issues that the Suns have, essentially? And in this game, yes. And, of course, the Timberwolves are on the second night of a back-to-back, so you got to mention that. But it's just crazy, I think, to look at the stats alone for Devin Booker in the 3 games that he's played. And combine those 3 games, he's averaging 31 points, 8.7 assists, 6.3 rebounds on 56, 45, and 100 shooting splits. And the Suns, while he's on the court, are playing at a 123.9 offensive rating, which would be, of course, historic if they continued to play at that rating.
He was absolutely insane last night, and he's been insane for the past few games. It's just, I got myself in a little bit of trouble online last night because I kind of threw out. I was more so joking than anything else, comparing the two stars on this team, and then people were like, "Why are you comparing?" I get it, but Booker at this point is. I don't know if you want to say he's better than KD. He's not. I guess it doesn't matter. But he is the offensive engine of this team in a way that I think KD maybe can't sustain at this point. And you saw it with just the fact that he can come back from a calf injury and immediately put the level of pressure on the rim that he did. Yes, the jump shot was there. He was hitting pull-up threes, putting guys on his hip, making the traditional Devin Booker shots in the mid-range. But really, it was the fact that there was no Beal. The Suns needed a guy to come in and drive the ball, and Booker was there to do it, even coming back from an injury, just relentlessly attacking the basket, finishing and ones, getting tossed his body, hitting the stanchion hard, hitting the floor on some of these drives, and he was still just able to do it. And he is the guy that makes the Suns offense run at this point. One stat is that it's only 3 games, but the Suns have a 123.9 offensive rating with Devin Booker on the floor this season. Their next best offensive rating, if you look at the roster, is, of course, Kevin Durant, who's also super fucking good. But at 118.2, their offense naturally reaches another level when you can put Booker on the floor as well. He opens things up for just everyone else on the roster.
It's not an insult to Kevin Durant to say what you said, for the record. Devin Booker is just playing that well so far this season, and whether or not it's sustainable for him or what KD can do in the future is sort of irrelevant to what the conversation is right now, and that's that Devin Booker is not just playing as the best player on the Suns right now. I think you can make a case that in those 3 games he's the best player in the NBA, but nobody gives an award, of course, for 3 games. You have to play more, and that's the hope for Devin Booker, to play more. But when I was watching this game against the Minnesota Timberwolves and seeing what they look like with Devin Booker on the court, I think it's not just that they needed his offense. I think they needed his leadership. I think there was a void of leadership on the team when he wasn't playing, because it's not just him, right, that's not playing. There's no more Chris Paul on this team. Bradley Beal is playing at times, but playing injured, and then Kevin Durant, I think, is one of the better leaders on the team. Don't get me wrong, but is sort of a chill leader. He's not out there. If you make a mistake, Devin Booker's going to yell at you. He's, as Frank Vogel described him after the game, the most vocal player on the team right now. And I do think that helps as well, in that it's not, I think there's a form of leadership being the vocal leader out there, calling plays out, telling people when they've made mistakes, or encouraging players to do something differently or better on a future play. But there's also settling down the offense, running the right play at the right time. There are the things that point guards traditionally do that are sort of different than just dribbling and passing. They're mental, if you will. And I think that was missing too. I think there was a lot of what Devin Booker, because of his skill set, because of his ability to score at any spot of the floor, to get to any spot on the floor, the fact that he rarely gets sped up by any defender, those kinds of things, that was missing too. They didn't have anybody like that. Of course, it's going to be a problem when too much of those offensive responsibilities fall onto Grayson Allen or Eric Gordon, because they can't do it anymore. Or at least Eric Gordon can't do it anymore. Grayson Allen never could. And so those were the types of things that were missing, and I think it stood out to me seeing Devin Booker back on the court that was back too.
Yeah, I mean, in order to beat a team like the Timberwolves' number 1 defense and whatever, you really had to take a multifaceted approach. And so part of that, there was an obvious emphasis placed on pace for the Suns last night. So we saw something I loved, is we saw Eric Gordon, we saw Grayson Allen empowered to attack early in transition, drive and get to the rim themselves, really focusing on attacking the Timberwolves defense before they can get set, because in transition, they're fine. Once they get set, they're a much, much harder beast to kill. And, that's part of the equation, and that was great. They, again, the urgency was there from the jump in the first quarter, but once you get later into a game, you can't just beat a team in transition. And so that's where Booker's growth as a tactician, possession by possession, really comes into play. He's not Chris Paul. He'll probably never be Chris Paul. Just speaking honestly about like who he can be in the fourth quarter and the way that he can really like pin down and take apart a defense. Chris Paul is one of the best ever at doing that. But Booker has elevated himself into, for sure, the upper echelon of playmakers in the NBA at doing that. And that's not a place that we necessarily expected him to be 3 or 4 years ago before Chris Paul, to be honest. So the fact that he can leap into that role himself and do that now, it's great to have other guys who can jump down a team's throat and like push the pace in transition or whatever, but sometimes you need a player to settle them down in the half court. And clearly Book is that guy. Hopefully Beal can be to an extent that guy too. We just, haven't seen enough of him healthy.
Yeah, and I think being new to a team too, and this is not just Beal, to some extent it's Kevin Durant as well, even though he is sort of the second longest tenured major player on this team outside of like Josh Okogie. I think it takes time to get used to guys to sort of take that role on. And I think, you could make a case that the Suns need another on-court leader on this team at some point if they could get one, and that would be pretty helpful. We've called it a point guard. It doesn't need to be a point guard as well. If Eric Gordon finds a way to take that role on, that's great. Nurkic, whoever it is, it's there to grab a little bit, and I think they could use it. If it ends up being Beal, if KD just ends up being a little bit more vocal, whatever it is, or a trade, I'll mention it again, if they find a point guard or something out there that can help them in that regard, that wouldn't be bad for this team. It's a benefit, right, that they're not all old at this point, in that it's a long season. We know the problems when players are older. We're seeing some of it with Bradley Beal at this point. But, it means that there isn't one of those guys that's been in the league a long time, that's seen everything throughout his time in the NBA, that can just be there and be that person who understands those kinds of things. So maybe they'll find that in the future. But I think, in the meantime, if Devin Booker is healthy and playing, obviously he's going to be that main leader on the floor as he should be. And it's good to see that. And I hope it continues throughout his time when he's healthy here in this season. Impressive to see him. He is on a minutes restriction, which he still found a way to get over 30 points on that minutes restriction. He was definitely finding a way to get those spots. And we'll see how he ends up, continuing to play. One thing I thought was interesting that he mentioned, I don't know if you caught this, somebody after the game asked him about whether or not he wanted to get out there more. And he said, yeah, I want to get out there more in every game, but I learned my lesson in the last game about that. I think the implication there was that, he was supposed to be on a minutes restriction in the last game he played against San Antonio and probably said no and stayed out on the court. Maybe that's where the other injury came from. So maybe there's a little bit of growth in Devin Booker finding ways to keep his body healthy longer term because they need him out there.
We'd love to see some character development if that's the case. I think he even referred to himself as hard-headed too in another response. So yeah, I mean, I like the fact if he's kind of poking fun at himself there. That would be a way in which it's good to not be Chris Paul. Because Chris Paul, would always lie about his health and say he was fine when he wasn't, and then he would get injured again. And we don't need that from another star player. So ideally, Devin, if you could not do that, that would be great.
Yeah, after the last game that Bradley Beal played, they asked him how he felt, and he's like, my back hurts. Like, it was weird to hear a player tell the truth to somebody about injuries because we hadn't seen that in a while. Everyone's just like, I'm fine. He's like, I tweaked it a little bit, and I'm hoping I can play in the next game. And we'll see. Back injuries are weird, when it comes to Bradley Beal, and there's no way of really predicting when you can come back from that or how you're going to feel. So whatever it is with Beal, take the right approach. He's on this team for a long time. They need him to be healthy for a long time. And with Devin Booker back, of course, there's a little bit of breathing room in comparison to if he wasn't back and you needed Beal back sooner. So hopefully he's healthy. Another thing I wanted to point out just from the post-game of this last Minnesota Timberwolves game, somebody asked, I think it was Gerald, asked Devin Booker if he feels like he needs to play even better when he's playing against a friend like Karl Anthony Towns, and he said something like, No, I feel that every night I got smoked with, and then KD chimed in, everyone in the league. I thought it was interesting for Devin Booker to sort of acknowledge the fact that he kind of hates everyone and wants to do that against everyone in the NBA.
He's just one of those types of competitors. You know, we've been, like, people who have followed the podcast for a while know how we've built out, quote unquote, the list of, like, people who have antagonized Devin Booker or the Phoenix Suns over the past, like, 5 years. Mostly that's a joke, but I do think there's something to the idea that Book is one of those competitive types who needs to invent a reason to hate you just to give himself that competitive edge. Maybe you didn't even particularly do anything, but that's just how he functions. So, yeah, you're going to get added to the list.
So, you mentioned it. Suns fans are traumatized, I think, a little bit by fourth quarters recently. And, you know, this was obviously going to be a huge topic when we planned on recording after, Sunday's game, which would have been Monday, which is another game where they just completely fell apart in the fourth quarter. Now we have the opportunity to talk about it now. Obviously, it feels a little different after they've won a game, but it's still a problem. It's been 11 games. Now, what we've done in the past is after like 10 or so game chunks, you and I have pulled some stats to talk about those stats on this podcast, finding a way to talk about, you know, essentially the season in little chunks, and then we can keep an eye on those stats and see how they change. I pulled some, so I want to talk about those on this podcast. This is a midweek sort of surprise podcast that we didn't plan, so we're not going to, you know, force it to be too long here, but I wanted to add some in here for context. But the first stats I pulled, I think, had to be about the fourth quarter. Now, there's three stats that I wanted to mention. Shooting in the fourth quarter, the Suns are shooting 37.6% in the fourth quarter so far this season. They're also 28th in three-point percentage, so almost last in that, and they're last overall in free throw attempts. And those, I think, are the big stats that stood out to me when looking at the fourth quarter so far this season. And when I say that, I say that to really put some emphasis on the fact that the biggest issue so far, now there are other issues, but the biggest issue so far to me in the fourth quarter is just straight up missing shots. They are not hitting anything in those fourth quarters. There are other things wrong, don't get me wrong, but that's the one that I wanted to point out first. What do you think about the fourth quarter woes that the Suns have faced so far this season?
It sucks and it's worrying, but I don't necessarily think that we can infer too much from a bunch of games where it was kind of just KD, in particular because of the way the offense revolves around KD. Now, the first thing I'll say, you said, 37% there, field goal shooting? Yeah. I wonder what it jumps up to if you just take out, because there have been a lot of awful performances there. It's not just one. But the OKC loss, where they went 2 for 21 in the fourth quarter, takes the cake. Yeah. If you take out just that outlier performance, if you consider that some really poor outlier shooting, it probably jumps up to 40, 41%. Not good, but I wonder what happens if you just take out that one performance.
Well, I'll say this. I looked at the 3 games with Devin Booker, what they shot in the fourth quarter in those 3 games. Mind you, 37% in fourth quarters on the season. That's 11 games. 3 games with Devin Booker. In those 3 games, they shot in the fourth quarter 52%, 47.8%, and 50%. You know, there is a question as to whether or not Devin Booker can fix all of the issues with the Suns. The answer is probably no. There are other things that need to happen to get better. But statistically, the shooting in the fourth quarters has gone up pretty dramatically when Devin Booker is, 1, taking a lot of them, taking a lot of those shots, and 2, setting up other guys to take those shots. So, obviously, Devin Booker helps. This is not, I'm not breaking ground here.
Yeah, and again, it's
Devin Booker helping.
It's nothing against KD in particular, because it's not necessarily fair. You can't do a one-to-one comparison of how the Suns' offense looks with just KD, which is rather uninspiring, versus how the Suns' offense looks with KD plus Book. That's not a knock on KD to say that it looks better with 2 stars instead of 1, but we do need to acknowledge that as soon as you inject Booker into the equation, or even Beal for that matter, the team starts getting downhill again in a way that they just can't right now with Kate. I think the biggest thing that's frustrating a lot of Suns fans who may be they don't even necessarily know it, some of them, but they're, you see a lot of people online asking, why is the Suns offense so stagnant in the fourth quarter? And I think in particular, you see a lot of frustration towards these sort of KD mid-post ISOs that are being run in the fourth quarter, where naturally basketball is a game of advantage creation. And the best way to create an advantage if KD is your only star on the floor, at least the logic from Frank Vogel and company would be, is to give him the ball in the post, have him draw the double team, and then move it around. Now, fans are becoming frustrated because KD is kind of turning the ball over a lot this year. So on those doubles, sometimes you're seeing him kind of flustered more than he probably would have been in past seasons. Or B, it's just kind of a predictable way of creating offense. And furthermore, he's not going to get downhill doing that, and the Suns aren't going to get to the free throw line by doing that. None of that takes away from the fact that playing like that is maybe kind of a necessity if you only have KD on the floor, because there's no other player on this team, if Booker's out and Beal are out, that can consistently drive the basketball without turning it over in the fourth quarter. And dare I say, even play make for others as well. So having Book in there is just such a necessity where, yes, it doesn't completely solve the Suns offense and plug up 100% of their holes, but as far as clutch play goes, it plugs up 85, 90% of them, he's that critical to what they need to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's important to remember that when Devin Booker comes back into the lineup, it's not going from 0 stars to 1 star. It's going from 1 star to 2 stars. And that is the biggest difference. I think if Devin Booker was playing these games by himself with no Beal and no KD, there would be a lot of similar issues of when Devin Booker's off the floor, the Suns collapse, the same way it was when Devin Booker wasn't playing and KD would come off the floor. So, I think to give credit to, by the way, KD's been really good, extremely good. The stats are really there, but you're right. The skill set it's at this point of his career, the skill set is not the type of skill set where you could just run the offense through him dribbling over and over and over at the top of the key and create good offense out of that. I do think that some of the issues in the fourth quarter have been just the team being a little bit disorganized, and I think that even was the case when Devin Booker came off the floor in this Timberwolves game. They didn't know what play they were running at first. And some nerves. I think there were some nerves there. I think you can see it in Eric Gordon. I think you could see it in Grayson Allen a little bit, and maybe even a little bit Kevin Durant, because those turnovers have been, crucial to some of the losses from KD. And, part of that is they know that Devin Booker's gone. They know Bradley Beal's gone. Some of those guys won't be playing those minutes if they were healthy. And also they're new. They're new to each other. They need to get used to each other. They need to get used to that offense. And I think a lot of those types of issues, including the shooting, will normalize a little bit as the season goes on. So I think the fourth quarters have been really bad. But I think, we've sort of memed continuity, you and I, Sam, on this podcast, if only to say that the Suns were failing and James Jones did nothing for 2 seasons in a row, in some sense. But it's really important early in the season, and teams that have a lot of continuity are playing really well early in the season, and that's not a coincidence. If you make massive, massive changes, 11 guys are new on the roster, it's going to take a little time to get there. That's not to say that there's not some level of panic that should be had about this team, but I do think we need to see it healthy a little bit first, and if we get that chance, I don't think there will be as much panic.
Yeah, and no, there won't be. But just regarding the continuity thing, you look at teams. There are teams already. I don't know how many minutes they've necessarily logged together, but if you just look at all the most commonly used 5-man lineups in the NBA right now, the Suns are way down there. There are teams that have not necessarily been hit with the injury bug so far, where you'll find 3 or 4 5-man lineups that they have already that are more common than the Suns' most used lineup, because how many starting lineups have we already seen? We've seen Josh Okogie in that 5th spot. We've seen Keita Bates-Diop in that 5th spot. We saw Grayson Allen one game in that 5th spot, and then obviously Book and Beal trading places back and forth. So I hope we get that continuity. I hope we finally get to see a real stretch where the big three are all in, and we get some solid, like, objective data of just how they all mesh together, and we can really look into that. But it's always been the danger of this team that it just might not coalesce in the regular season the way we'd ideally want, and that even going into the playoffs, we might still have some questions.
It's one of the issues with the idea of changing up the starting lineup based on matchups, especially if you're including one of the guys in those changeups is a guy who maybe is not going to be in the rotation, or in some games will be in the rotation and some games won't, depending on health.
You talk about Josh?
Yeah, sometimes you just got to play the guys that will for sure be playing.
Can we give a quick shout out to Josh for last night?
Oh, but we're going to talk about him. Okay. I have some stats.
All right,
okay.
Cool.
But first I want to mention, since you brought up starting lineup.
Awesome game yesterday.
Booker's back. So we know 3 starters, right? Booker, KD, Nurkic. And then the other 2 guys that they started in this Minnesota game, this is an example of what I mean. Just play the guys that you know for sure are playing. Eric Gordon and Grayson Allen. Now, maybe that's a little bit of, first of all, it's kind of disrespectful to Cat, which was funny because at times Eric Gordon was guarding Cat.
And Allen as well. I thought it was a great strategy. Cat had a solid game, but I thought taking the guy who is like least likely in his skill set, versus Ant, who's like a killer. And Ant had a horrible game for a different reason. They had a great defensive strategy on Ant too. But Ant's a killer, and he's going to go out and, like, no matter who you put on him, he's going to try and kill them. Putting Smalls on Cat and switching Smalls onto Cat throughout the game and forcing him to be aggressive when that's not necessarily his go-to, I thought was genius game planning.
I love it. I love the disrespect that's built in. But on the other side of that, maybe Vogel, and this is something I've been begging for since before the season started, maybe Vogel is starting to lean into, okay, at least when Booker's back, at least when we have guys who can get downhill, let's maximize the spacing as much as possible in that starting lineup. And we'll see if that impacts at all, if it's Eric Gordon or if it's Grayson Allen as that 5th guy when they're all healthy, so that offense is fully maximized and you're stretching the opposing defense as thin as possible. Because look, as much as we I've made comments about the number 1 defense being the Timberwolves, they were that throughout the season, and the Suns absolutely put it on them in the first half of this game due to the offense that they had. So I'm not sure if that's going to happen, but just mentioning the starting lineup, I'd be curious to see what it ends up being when they're healthy. Now that when Devin Booker's back, they kept both of those guys in it. They didn't put Keita Bates-Diop in. They didn't put Josh Okogie in, right? They didn't have any of those sort of quote-unquote defensive first guys. They just went all offense in that lineup.
Yeah, but what's interesting is the defense first guys were still so critical to the game plan because Josh Okogie and Jordan Goodwin both still played a role in this game because Beal was out and Booker was on a minutes restriction. They still logged 35 minutes combined, and they were instrumental in limiting Anthony Edwards to his worst game of the season so far. Consistently, and this is something, by the way, that I was impressed to see. Both Drew Eubanks and even a little bit of Yusuf Nurkic playing above the level of screen, throwing some traps onto Ant to really, like, get him out of his comfort zone and kind of mix things up and force the ball into other players. We still saw it a lot more with Eubanks than we did with Nurkic. They're still less comfortable with Nurkic in that position. But just the fact that we saw a little bit of it last night, I thought was encouraging. And, having guys at the point of attack like Okogie and Goodwin, you could argue that their skill sets are, a little bit too similar, that maybe there isn't room for them in the rotation. But having guys, a guy like that consistently out on the floor who can ram through screens at the point of attack and really put ball pressure on whoever the best offensive player is on the other team is going to continue to be really important. And this is why Vogel has some really difficult decisions up ahead. I could foresee a world where obviously only one of Goodwin or Okogie is playing in the rotation if the Suns are fully healthy. I could see a world where both of them are still playing, and it's a little bit harder to find the minutes, but maybe not necessarily as hard to find the minutes if, like, you're willing to play a little bit smaller sometimes, if you're willing to reduce maybe a guy like Yuta Watanabe, who I think has been pretty bad this season. I don't know if you have any comment there. We'll see what happens with those 2 guys. Right now, it's really difficult to choose because I think clearly the momentum was in Goodwin's favor. But Okogie came out last night and hit 3 super awesome threes, like super important threes in the first half to, like, continue to justify his ability to stay on the basketball court. So I was really happy for him with the game he had.
Listen, life's all about leveling up. Whether you're handling business on the field or kicking it in your zone, you like to celebrate with cigars that match the moment. That's why you should link up with Famous Cigars to bring you a wild deal. Right now, you can grab 8 premium cigars for just $8. You heard that right. 8 top-rated cigars at $1 a stick. Top quality brands like Oliva, Romeo y Julieta, and Davidoff. Handpicked just for you and worth over $80. Hit up famouscigars.com/cam and lock in this exclusive deal. While you're there, check out their insane selection of premium cigars, all shipped fresh and fast from their massive 20,000 square foot humidor. That's half a football field. Famous Cigars has been in the game since 1939 and still family owned. So celebrate every win with the folks at Famous. 8 cigars for $8. famouscigars.com/cam.
Your kids could get free or low-cost health coverage from Medicaid or CHIP. Even if you've applied before, they may be eligible now. Kids up to age 19 are covered for checkups, vaccines, dentist visits, hospital care, and more. And if they already have Medicaid or CHIP, remember to renew every year. Visit insurekidsnow.gov or call 877-KIDS-NOW. Paid for by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
Okay, I have some more stats that I want to throw at you and relevant to what we were just talking about here. And this is the 3-point percentage for 3 players that I wanted to bring up. One of them is Josh Okogie. Now, you talk about him hitting important threes. You're right. And he had a great game against the Minnesota Timberwolves, but he's currently shooting 26% on the season. Yuta Watanabe, you could say he's up to 36% because it was lower than that before the last game, and then he made a few in the last game. And then Jordan Goodwin is now up to 35% from the 3-point line. And I bring all those up together just to have a conversation about all 3 guys, because I think all 3 guys, there's minutes to be had on this team. Maybe not by all 3 of them when they're healthy. Now, we've had some of that conversation. I think, to be honest, I think you can make the case that Goodwin and Okogie are finding ways to earn those minutes even if they can't shoot threes, because the offense might be enough to sustain them. You know, the difference between Jordan Goodwin playing with KD on the floor, very good, and Jordan Goodwin playing without KD on the floor, very bad, is pretty dramatic. And, you know, eventually there should be a star on the court at all times. So maybe that is enough to mitigate what Jordan Goodwin is. But Yuta Watanabe, you brought him up. I think the thing about Yuta is he does things okay most of the time. But the reason he's on the court is to hit and make threes and to shoot them. You know, that's the other part of it. And if he's not shooting them closer to 40%, it does limit his utility on the court. Because as tall as he is at 6'9", he can't guard huge guys. You know, at that height, he's probably more like he's guarding threes on the floor, maybe occasionally switching on to guards.
He's also a really bad rebounder for his size.
Yeah, has not rebounded a lot, has not created a lot. Had a really nice lob to Chimezie Metu at the end of the last game. That was a nice little cherry on top of that game.
Justice for Chimezie Metu, by the way, who came out.
He looked good right away.
Came out in those 2.5 minutes and was gunning for playing time. That's another guy
Bol still couldn't get on the court. Yeah,
Chimezie Metu. If anyone's coming for Yuta's playing time right now, honestly, it might be Chimezie Metu. So
yeah,
we'll see.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good point. Yes, and so there's that. But the other part of it, Jordan Goodwin has started to hit some threes off the ball, just some catch and shoot threes. And man, would that be huge for this team if he can continue to do that. And then Okogie, as much as that last game was good, it's been real bad. 26%. It's the worst of his career.
It's been bad, but you know what? Look at this. Jordan Goodwin, 46% true shooting. Josh Okogie, 59%. And I think
because of the free throws.
Because Okogie recklessly
he's a grifter.
Throws himself at the basket, but he's really good at grifting. And it is still going to be important that he actually is able to stretch the defense just a little bit. Not even stretch them, but just that he's like seen as some sort of modicum of a threat, right, against the opposing team. Yuta is, in theory, the best shooter of the 3, but I like him, or I want to like him. My impression of him right now is that he's tall Landry Shamet. Mike, I'm not gonna lie to you, because we haven't seen the creation. I don't think we've seen the defense. We certainly haven't seen rebounding. I just don't think he's really impacted the game on either end of the floor. As a matter of fact, if you look at the value of a replacement player, the VORP stats for the Suns right now, you could say you care about those or don't care about those 11 games in, and that's fine. Technically, the worst VORP on the Suns through 11 games is Yuta Watanabe.
There's one reason I care less about that for Yuta.
Negative stat. Sure, go ahead.
He's played the most minutes without KD on the floor.
That's fair.
You know, and the reason for that, obviously, is he comes in for KD often. But the thing is when Booker has played very few games, Beal has played very few games, that means he's playing the most minutes without any star on the floor. So he's playing the roughest, toughest, hardest minutes to score in. You know, like I mentioned it last night just watching this game, everyone makes more sense when Devin Booker's on the floor. Everyone. But especially somebody like Yuta, who is there to just catch and shoot threes. If you don't have anybody penetrating and feeding him the ball on those catch and shoot threes, it's going to be more difficult for somebody like him. But playing the most minutes without KD, that's not his role at this point. You can say that he showed a little bit in those Japan qualifiers, but that's totally different than what he's expected to do on this team. And I think he will get better. And the other part
every single role player on this team, just to underline the point you just made, every single one of them. We talked about how Jordan Goodwin is bad when he has to run an offense by himself because duh. Every single one of them will look better if they can crack the rotation and get some minutes when the Suns are fully healthy. Every single one of them will look better. Yeah, but there won't be room for all of them. So we got to cut one or two.
And, you know, maybe it is these three guys that end up being the guys who play. But
I'll just say, last thing I'll say about Yuta real quick is that, like, I know what the importance is of theoretical gravity, regardless of what your actual shooting percentages are.
And they do guard him.
They do. Yeah. But if he's hovering around 36, 37% for the entire season instead of 40, and Chimezie Metu can hit like 34 and also be a vertical leap threat, like a real lob catch guy, and can also be a switchable defender. Mm-hmm. It's pretty compelling to me.
It's nice to have options.
At least worth a look. It's worth a look.
I mentioned, I guess it was mostly playback because I didn't think we got to have a podcast to talk about this, but that sometimes it's good when Okogie turns down threes. And you look, of course, occasionally he will prove me wrong, but look, 74% of the time he won't at this point. And I thought it was interesting because Devin Booker brought this up in the postgame. I don't know if you heard him talk about this, but they asked him about Josh Okogie, and he said, you know, he talked about threes. Of course, threes are important, but occasionally he said he needs to be more like a Draymond. He actually named Draymond by name, which is something we did in playback as well. And he talked about turning those threes that he's turning down into DHOs. And this is something I wanted to mention because of how I think it was particularly relevant against this team. It's just that he didn't start, so it wasn't as important. But like, say somebody like Gobert is on the court, and at times he's going to be switched on to Okogie, and he's going to just stand in the paint, and Okogie is now going to be at the three-point line with 15 feet of space between him and the next defender. He can shoot that. But if there's 14 seconds on the shot clock left, he can also dribble into a handoff for somebody like Devin Booker, Grayson Allen, Kevin Durant, whoever it's going to be. And because the other defender that's guarding him is so far back in that play, there's going to be a lot of space for whoever he's screening for coming around that. Now, of course, if they switch, Okogie has to catch it on the run and make the right play, but that's why Devin Booker brought up Draymond Green, because they want him to learn to be able to do that and to be an effective offensive piece and a threat, because that space is something you can use against the defense, even if he's not shooting. And it's really vital and really important for him to figure that out, because if they start finding ways where the ball swings to him with 12 seconds left on the shot clock, and instead of it being a three that goes in 26% of the time, it turns into a handoff with Devin Booker where they can find somebody else wide open, right, where Devin Booker shoots it.
Yeah.
It's a lot better of a play.
That's going to be way more efficient if you look at the points per possession. It's a big ask. I mean, we did talk about this on playback. It's a big ask for Okogie to beat Draymond Green. Draymond Green without the psychosis, if you will, because that's maybe what we're really
maybe a little bit
for.
of it. A little bit of it.
Would be good. A mature level of psychosis that he brings to he keeps on the floor and not directed towards his own teammates and his own
of course.
own organization, because that's the issue with Draymond.
I don't know. Have you watched Jordan Poole this year?
Well, yeah. As a matter of fact, I have. And remember, I placed the bet.
Understand Draymond Green.
Remember, I placed the bet. I took the over. This was on our Patreon podcast. But when we were placing bets around the league at the start of the season, I said Jordan Poole over, I think, like 26 points per game, just as my long shot bet. And I did not realize that Kyle Kuzma was just going to be the guy taking 25 shots per game on that team. And that Poole was actually going to rein it in a little bit. So he hasn't been good.
The most Wizards team of all time, team.
He hasn't been good. At least they have Koulibaly. He seems to be doing all right. What were we talking about?
More stats.
Oh, Okogie.
More stats.
Okay, so just real quick, Okogie can't be Draymond, but if he could like even tap into 25% of that, then yeah, he's
it's
earned
just
his minutes.
About using him differently. Those DHOs, turning him into a screener even when he has the ball. You know, we talked about him being an on-ball screener, but even when he has the ball, it's just a different way of using him, something that they haven't done much of. And I think Frank Vogel appears to be more willing to do than Monty was. So I think we'll see a little bit more of that. We saw a little bit of it in the last 2 games. Here's one other stat. And this is more of asking you where your panic level is at. And this stat is Bradley Beal, after this year, has 3 years and $160 million left on his contract. I only say that to say, look, he's been pretty hurt. And it's a back injury. And I don't know what it's going to be. And I'm concerned about this season. But I'm looking at the entirety of that contract. And that kind of scares me at this point. And this is always what we knew was going to happen with Bradley Beal. He's not going to play the whole season. He's got a lot of years left on his contract. The goal is for them to be healthy in the postseason. All of that still matters to me, but he has barely played this year and has not looked healthy when he played, and he still has 3 years left on his contract. Where are you as far as the panic meter it comes to Bradley Beal?
Yeah, I'm at a solid 5.5. Yeah. What about you? I should say
I'm about there. Yeah.
My mind is clouded by the fact that I actually have a back spasm as we speak. This is not something that like came up that is flaring up right now as we record the podcast, but it's something I've been dealing with for the past couple of days. And like, obviously not a professional athlete here, but if you put a basketball in my hands right now and told me to go out there and play, I might cry. I mean, it's the pain level with back injuries sometimes, man, is just unpredictable, and you don't know day to day if it's going to get better or not. And that's a lot of money to be putting in that guy's hand. You know, what I think is interesting is when he's actually played this year, I didn't feel like his stats aren't great. He shot 39% from the field, 33% through his three games. But I didn't feel like his mobility necessarily was limited. Did you? I mean, his conditioning.
The last game, yes.
I felt more, maybe the last game, but I felt more like it was a fact of he hadn't been getting full practice runs. So his conditioning was so poor, and like especially in those first 2 games, then he would get up and down the court for 3 or 4 minutes and he'd already be gassed. But he'd be throwing himself on the floor, diving after loose balls, driving the ball like his normal self, not playing.
He's not scared.
Yeah, exactly. Not playing scared, not playing otherwise like you would think that he was afraid that any sudden movement could throw his back out of sorts again. And hey, look, maybe ultimately playing like that is why he did injure himself again. I don't know. I really hope we're able to get him back and get a healthy run with these 3, because the team just doesn't work if Beal can't somewhat survive playoff runs without injuring himself.
They can be pretty good.
They can be really fucking good
when 2 guys are healthy.
Yes.
But, you know,
I don't think they can be better than Denver Nuggets good.
It'd be really hard to win a title. Exactly. It would be, you'd have to be really lucky. I mean, ultimately, things would have to fall right into place in order for you to do that. Anyway, we just need to see 10 games in a row by him or something like that to make me feel better at this point. But I'm a little bummed. I feel really bad for him, ultimately, making the massive change that he did moving across the country and then not even getting to play healthy, you know, because of a preseason injury. Okay, I got some more team stats. These are just team stats that I collected about the entirety of the team, just to talk about it over the last 11 games, and then let's jump into listening to some voicemails that we got from some people who listen. First one, 4th. The Suns are 4th in 3-point percentage so far this season. Did you realize that?
I actually did. I wanted to give some credit to the fact that we were talking about these guys like Yuta maybe hadn't shot the ball quite like we wanted. We talked about being disappointed in Okogie and Goodwin to a certain extent. But then you've got Booker at 46%, career high.
Yep.
KD at 46%. I'm not looking at his player page, but I assume that's also a career high. And Grayson Allen.
Yeah.
Member of the Grayson Allen trade. At 49%, if that's what we're dubbing it now. I don't know. Would you say Grayson Allen's been better than Nurkic this season? I think
he's definitely better at shooting 3-pointers.
Certainly better at shooting 3-pointers. I'd say the overall impact of
Nurkic
those guys
is at like 20-something%. Yeah.
They're about at a wash. I would say between the two of them, because Nurkic does some really important stuff too. But those three guys,
Nurkic has a massive impact for a guy who can't score at all. It's kind of crazy.
But yes. Those three are carrying the team. I mean, they're putting our entire 3-point percentage on their collective backs.
Yeah. And, of course, Drew Eubanks, who's shooting 100% from three so far this season.
I yelled at my TV when he took that yesterday. I was like, you idiot. And then, of course, it went in. So good for him.
When we were watching playback, he almost took one, and you were like panicking when he almost took one. So as soon as he was wide open in that corner, I thought of you panicking in that moment. And somehow it went in. It didn't look good. Somehow it went in. But look, if he can occasionally make them, if the shot clock's winding down, that would be great.
He is a career 36% 3-point shooter, 16 of 45 now, honestly.
So he's taken 45.
Not bad. But the thing is,
maybe we can Channing Frye him. He came from Portland too.
Yeah, actually not a terrible comparison.
8th in free throws attempted. That's fun, right? It's nice to see those two stats after Monty Williams for a long time. 4th in 3-point percentage, 8th in free throws attempted. The Suns get fouled. And I think that free throws attempted stat is particularly impressive when you factor in the fact that Devin Booker has only played 3 games, and in those 3 games hasn't taken a ton of free throws. They're finding ways to get to the line. Nurkic is really good at it. Eubanks is really good at it. But I think, obviously, Josh Okogie, who we talked about, is good. And I think the relentless attacking of guys like Eric Gordon and Grayson Allen, who, look, you don't want them doing it every game because they're not as good as Bradley Beal and Devin Booker, but their willingness to get in there and get hit around and embrace that contact has been pretty helpful for this team.
For sure.
Any thoughts on that? Free throws attempted?
Yeah,
mostly a KD stat, right?
Yeah, I mean, I expected them to be around here. This one is not as surprising to me because it's just good to have. I mean, I still feel like KD doesn't necessarily get the respect of some other superstars. So I feel like between Beal's driving, if he ever gets healthy, and maybe a little bit more respect for KD on some of these drives. I know he's averaging 9 free throw attempts per game, but it does feel like he still gets slapped quite a bit on his kind of final strides to the basket when he does opt to drive. So this is good stuff. I think they could go even higher, to be honest. It's something I don't know that anyone, to take for granted.
Nobody, I'm just saying this just from eye test alone. I don't actually have this stat, but nobody in the NBA gets fouled on jump shots as much as Kevin Durant. It's kind of crazy how he just like pulls up on guys and they reach in. I don't know what it is about the way he shoots, or maybe because there's no way to contest him at the top, more players end up reaching when he brings the ball down low in his shooting pocket. But he gets fouled on jump shots a lot. And it's just like you don't see that very often with a lot of guys, especially from that mid-range area. Some of that is because he pulls up so quick too. Okay, here's a bad one. 26th in turnovers. Now, I want to say that it's gotten slightly better over the last few games.
From 28th?
From 29th, yeah.
Yesterday was their first single-digit turnover game of the entire season, which is crazy.
Yeah,
that used to be like a regular occurrence in the Chris Paul era.
Yeah. And look, Devin Booker is going to help with that stat. I think it's pretty clear. But yeah, that's one that you got to watch because I think it's really the reason they've lost most of the games that they've lost so far, right? Because when they shoot, when they end an offensive possession with a shot, they're doing pretty well in those plays, but they're giving up a lot of points on those turnovers. So that's one to watch. Lastly, I just pulled up their regular old offensive, defensive, and net rating stats. 10th in offense now. They're going up. That's Devin Booker's played 3 games, and I think the minutes with Kevin Durant on the floor. It's clear that that's going to be helped when Booker plays more. They went down in defense, 15th in defense, and they're 13th overall in net rating. These stats all look like a team who has been injured a lot throughout those first 10 games, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, they're still struggling, I think, a little bit just to find their identity. I will say, defensively, I like the versatility that they've been showing. I think that's a common theme that we've seen throughout this season. You really, when you watch, just like focus in on what the two centers are doing, and I think you'll see it. We've talked a little bit about it on playbacks. However, versatility is not necessarily a substitute. It's straight up not a substitute for like efficiency or being good. Yeah. And so some of the cracks on defense are starting to show. I don't like the fact that this team, for as scrappy as Frank Vogel said they were going to be, is 25th in steals. Right now, I think they could get a little bit better at being more aggressive, and that's kind of, again, where Josh Okogie, Jordan Goodwin, the importance of those guys is underscored as you need good players to pressure the ball and really make the opposing star players feel the defense, which is not something you're necessarily going to get, or just you're straight up not going to get if you start Grayson Allen or Eric Gordon as the fifth guy. Another thing with this team right now is corner threes. They're giving up... let me actually see the frequency here. I got to change the tab. So they're giving up the fifth most corner threes to opposing teams, and in accuracy, they are shooting just 28.2% on those corner threes against the Suns. That's a little bit of a concern to me right now.
But that is that's kind of a Frank Vogel stat. Force the ball into the corners and make those as contested as possible. That's kind of something that he's done on teams throughout his time coaching. So I'm curious to see how much that'll change.
Yes, but a team they're not going to shoot 28% on corner threes all season long because of the virtue of how often that is the release valve play of just like you swing it to the corner and that's the guy who's open. It's great if the Suns want to clamp down, rotate hard, contest corner threes, all of that they should be doing. 28% is not going to stick for the entire season. So that's just one thing I'm kind of keeping an eye on because I would expect some regression there. And that's a sign that maybe the defense is going to dip a little bit more. So, I think there are some early concerns with the defense. Mostly I like the effort, but they need to not shoot themselves in the foot by turning the ball over and then giving up easy transition opportunities. That's kind of the end.
This 15th in defense is like a turnover stat to me too. Just don't turn it over, and that defense is top 10 probably at this point. Yeah. So much of their struggles defensively has just been live ball turnovers and turning it over and over and over again. And look, it's difficult to get back in transition over and over and over again. And teams are good in transition. They've played a lot of good teams so far too. And Devin Booker helps obviously immensely with the offense, but if he is one of the big reasons the turnovers as a team are cut down, that has a pretty big impact on the defense as well. Not to mention he's been playing great defense for, I guess, like a season and a half. I don't know, something like that is where his defense has been really good so far. And I think that will have the biggest impact on this. So as long as he stays healthy, I think that defensive rating could get better as well. Let's take a quick break, and we'll come back and we'll listen to some voicemails. For those who didn't know, we brought back a phone number that you can call and leave us some voicemails. The phone number is 480-420-6553. Feel free to save it in your phone and give us a call and leave us a voicemail sometime. We'll be right back, and when we come back, we'll listen to some of those voicemails.
Your kids could get free or low-cost health coverage from Medicaid or CHIP. Even if you've applied before, they may be eligible now. Kids up to age 19 are covered for checkups, vaccines, dentist visits, hospital care, and more. And if they already have Medicaid or CHIP, remember to renew every year. Visit insurekidsnow.gov or call 877-KIDS-NOW. Paid for by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
All right, let's listen to some voicemails. Once again, if you want to give us a call, it's 480-420-6553. You can ask us a question. You can leave a comment about the game you just watched. I tweeted out that phone number immediately after the Timberwolves game. And Sam, you and I are going to do this for the first time in a long time. We're just going to listen to some voicemails that people left us. You ready?
I think it's literally been 4 years since we did this. This is I shit you not, a Kokoshkov era bit that we're bringing back, but I think it's a good time to bring it back.
All right, let's listen. Here's the first one that we got, I think immediately after the game.
You hear that? That's the sound of victory. Let's go, Suns!
All right, shout out to that guy.
The funniest part about this is, so like you guys are just coming up as numbers, so leave your name if you want us to give you a shout out. If you want us to give you a shout out on the pod, like if you're someone who we know through social media, or if you're not, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll take anonymous comments too. I suppose.
That's true.
Let's go Suns.
Yeah. And yeah, keep it. I would say if you want to be on the podcast, keep it under a minute is probably the best way to be on. Maybe under 30 seconds is the easiest way to go. Let's listen to another one here.
The hardest thing to do is sit out and not be there for my team. So I'm on the side. I try to be as vocal as I can.
Is listening to Booker, it sounds like.
Good to get a win in the first game back.
He played 26 minutes.
Devin Booker, number one option on the Phoenix Suns 2023. Let's go!
Wait, that was just the same guy.
I like him.
You didn't notice that it was the same number?
I didn't.
Shout out that guy for giving us two. Let's move on.
Here we go.
Dude, I don't even know what kind of message to leave here. All I'm saying is Booker is him, dude. Like, he's him. I mean, you got Kevin Durant and Devin Booker just clearly just dominating. Saw it in the playoffs last year. I mean, yeah, shit happens, whatever. See it now. It's great. You got Beal and Kevin Durant. Like, it's okay. It'll probably do. But you get all three of these dudes together, brother. Oh my God, we in business, boys. We good.
I like that he brought up the playoffs last year in this message when talking about Devin Booker, because it's true that we saw Devin Booker play at a level we had never seen him play in the playoffs last year. And, you know, the question was, of course, is this just what he's going to be like playing next to another star like Kevin Durant? And then we saw in the preseason that it just kind of continued, and he continued to play at that level. And so far this season, we've only seen 3 games, but he's still playing at that level. And I don't know what the ceiling is or how sustainable all of this is, but the fact that it was sustained over the course of the playoffs until, of course, Jeff Green injured him, and then the preseason, and then now in the regular season, it's a pretty good sign, I'd say. And I think Suns fans are pretty happy to see Devin Booker back, right?
They are happy to see Devin Booker back. I would say so. My favorite part here, this is not analysis, but just the brother. I'll always take anyone who good inflection, good tone there. It's nice message.
Here we go.
36 unbothered. That's all I gotta say.
36 unbothered. By the way, Booker tweeted 36 unbothered. People put it together, figured it out. This was right before the playoffs last year, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I just think unbothered is such a good way to describe how Devin Booker plays offense. Now, it's not to say that Devin Booker doesn't get bothered, because boy, does he get mad at people at times. It's just really hard to speed him up offensively, and unbothered is a good way to describe his game, I think.
I think it's also, look, are we reading too much into a 2-word tweet from his last spring? Maybe. But I always kind of read it as, tuning out the noise from the outside.
Of course.
Too,
definitely.
Which, to be honest, I don't know how good KD is at doing that, but I think Book is very good at doing it. KD, at least, we know he'll go online and troll a little bit.
I love that too. I'm not bothered by that. Here we go. Here's another one.
What's up, guys? It's Jake Grider calling from Chicago, where I'm playing a Jeff Buckley tribute show.
Oh,
I listened to every episode and saw the tweet with the number and figured I'd call. Watching them right now on a delay on the NBA app. It's good to have Booker back. They really do look unstoppable, man, when Booker's out there. You forget that he's one of the best players in the league. And when he's on, he looks like the best player in the league. I mean, we saw that in the playoffs. He was looking like peak MJ. It's just so good to see him out there, man. Like, it just changes everything. Everything. And when Beal gets right, man, barring injuries, I'm not gonna lie, I was feeling a little squirrely there for a bit, when we were losing games, but I don't know why it's so easy to forget how good Booker is, man, but he's a beast. Anyway, I love the pod. And keep doing what you guys are doing. You're the best. Bye.
Thanks, Jake. And shout out to Jeff Buckley. That's awesome.
Gone too soon.
Jake's a musician. I remember
cool
Jake
stuff.
used to live here in Phoenix. When I was in the music scene, I remember seeing Jake around every once in a while, actually. Now thinking, I don't blame any Suns fan right now for saying I can't wait till they're all healthy. But man, am I looking forward to the part of the season where we don't have to say that anymore, right?
Yes, I forget who it was. Otherwise, I'd give them credit. But someone was just leaving a response for me on Twitter yesterday saying that basically the preseason is over.
Yeah,
game one against or game one in the regular season was last night's win against the Timberwolves. So it sort of does feel like that in some respects. Obviously, the games that we played, the games that we've lost, count and carry some real gravity.
Yeah.
But in a sense, it does kind of feel like the season is only beginning now. And man, hopefully we can take this positive momentum and actually do something with it. We've got a big back-to-back road stretch against Utah this weekend. So we'll see how it shakes out.
I think about that a lot as far as it feeling like preseason when listening to like national podcasts, because often it's like either they don't talk about the Suns, which I don't blame them at all. For talking about
neither
the Suns,
do I. Yeah.
Or if they talk about them, they're just like, well, I don't know what to say, or are you worried about them at this point? And
there's no other.
Just wait till they're healthy and we'll see. You know.
Yeah, there's nothing else to say about the Suns from a national perspective at this point. I think if you're the type of person who's like scrolling through and ingesting as many national pods as you possibly can to get your weekly or daily fix of Suns content, they just don't have a lot to say right now. You know, we need to see those three on the floor together. And in fact, you might be disappointed by some of the stuff you hear because it kind of just emboldens the people who are on the more pessimistic side to come out and say, yeah, I told you so, which can't really prove them wrong at this point until Beal gets out on the floor.
Pythagorean theorem, guys. Yeah, no, you're right. All right, one more. Let's listen to this one here.
Hey, Mike and Sam. This is Jeff Wentworth calling. I'm a longtime listener of the pod. What a great game. That was awesome. One of the things I wanted to say was, has Book ever looked that fast? Like, did he not look unbelievably quick? I don't know. It was just kind of shocking to me seeing him come back from an injury like that. And man, he was moving off ball. I've never seen him drive the basket that hard. He was making unbelievable acrobatic shots. So fun to watch. Looked over at my dad and I was like, he looks like a top 5 player in the game, and he might be the best player on our team. And we have Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal on our team, which is ridiculous. So, that's all. I want to hear you guys' thoughts. Is Book top 5 in the league? Can he be? I don't know. All right. Well, appreciate you guys. Hope you have a good one. Thanks so much.
Has Devin Booker ever looked that fast? First of all, thanks, Jeff, for the call and the voicemail. What do you think? Did you notice the speed looking different from Devin Booker?
Not necessarily the speed. I mean, he looked fast, but he always looks fast to me. I don't know if the speed looked better coming off the injury. I think just the frequency at which he was doing it, I was like, oh yeah, he's got something to prove tonight, right? Like he's playing with that aggression. The one play I mentioned earlier, the one where he finished on the wrong foot, or off the wrong foot rather, got hit, took the N1, but fell hard into the stanchion, almost to the side of the stanchion, where like his body absorbed some of that impact in kind of what looked like it could have been, a bit of a scary fall. It was that level of aggression for him, and the fact that he was still persisting and finishing through that contact, that I was like, oh yeah, he's back. This is exactly what our offense has been missing. And for the second part of kind of Jeff's comment here, just like, can he be a top 5 player? Is he a top 5 player in the league when he's fully healthy? Yeah, I think you can make that argument. I'm not going to sit here and
Kellen said he's going to
really
rank
the players right now. Did Kellen say that
on our season preview?
Oh yeah, he brought it up as a distant possibility. He didn't say that he's going to be MVP.
I believe he said, I think Devin Booker's going to win MVP. Well, Kellen can fact check us if you'd like to, but he seems to think he will. And look, if he continues playing like he is, there's no reason other than missing games. There's no reason.
We need the Mavs. We need the Mavs to lose games.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That pesky Luka Doncic is he's competition.
as far as his quickness and his speed, I do think playing against Rudy Gobert, you really got to get it up on the glass really fast in order to avoid him. So he's kind of really the afterburners were firing in getting to the rim when Rudy Gobert was on the floor, because that's the only way you're going to get a shot up without him swatting it. So I think that was a little bit of it. I didn't notice anything, but I'm going to pay a little bit closer attention to that now that he said it. I think there is just some fearlessness in his game that is there with Devin Booker that has been really impressive. But thanks everyone who gave us a call. If you want to be, there was a couple other people too that I didn't get to play in this episode. So thank you to everyone who called us. 480-420-6553. If you'd like to give us a call, ask us a question, talk about games, stuff like that. We'll try and play these every once in a while on the podcast. Save it in your phone in case I forget to tweet it out, of course. One other thing I want to say, we're going to try and do playback pretty soon. Sam, I think the next game that we had circled on the calendar, Tuesday, right? Yeah.
Against the Portland Trailblazers, which again, keep in mind for the people that we're doing playbacks this year again. But for now, we are limited to the non-national TV appearances, which for the Suns is like every other game is on national TV. So I think the next non-national TV game is Tuesday against Portland. DeAndre Ayton, he's going to be there. Should be fun. There'll be narratives to discuss, and we'll have some fun, chatting online. So join us.
And if you watch on League Pass, you can watch the stream with us, hear us. If you watch here in Phoenix locally, you can always listen along and watch the game with us, try to sync it up as much as possible and take part of the chat. But thanks everyone for listening. If you'd like to check out our Patreon, patreon.com/thetimeline. We'll try and get a podcast out pretty soon. And of course, ethicalhoops.com for all our merchandise. We'll be back very, very soon. Appreciate you all.
Your kids could get free or low-cost health coverage from Medicaid or CHIP. Even if you've applied before, they may be eligible now. Kids up to age 19 are covered for checkups, vaccines, dentist visits, hospital care, and more. And if they already have Medicaid or CHIP, remember to renew every year. Visit insurekidsnow.gov or call 877-KIDS-NOW. Paid for by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.